Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I am Morale Calbian, the architectural historian for the county. In June, I was asked by the Board of Supervisors to research the history of the Confederate monument on the Clarke County Courthouse Green. I will share with you my findings and describe the types of resources that were consulted. I start with the bottom line up front. My research revealed that the county does not own the monument, nor the land on which it sits. This was quite a surprise. What you see on the left are two acts of the General Assembly, both dated March 1st, 1886. The top one is an act to incorporate the Association of the Survivors of the Clarke Cavalry. Among other things, the charter gave them the authority to hold up to 1 acre of real estate that would be tax exempt and erect on it memorial monuments. The second act just beneath it is dated the same day and authorizes the Board of Supervisors in Clarke County to sell and convey to the Association of the Survivors of the Clarke Cavalry a part of the public square in Berryville, not to exceed 25 feet in diameter, for the purpose of erecting, quote, a memorial monument to their deceased comrades in arms, end quote. On the right side is a deed dated June 19, 1900, 14 years later than the two acts of the General Assembly, between the Clarke County Board of Supervisors and the Association of the Survivors of the Clarke Cavalry. The deed references the General Assembly Acts of 1886 authorizing the county to sell or donate to the association a part of the public square. At a Board of Supervisors meeting on April 28, 1900, the board adopted a resolution authorizing their chairman to execute a deed on their behalf, conveying the lot in the form of a circle with a diameter of 25 feet in said public square. The deed states that the lot is to be used solely for the purpose of a monument. In summary, the monument was dedicated on July 21, 1900, with a huge ceremony held in Berryville. It was erected by the Association of the Survivors of the Clarke Cavalry, who had formed 16 years earlier in 1884. The funds to pay for the monument were raised primarily through donations solicited by the association and later on with the help of the Stonewall chapter of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, formed in 1897, and the Jeb Stuart Camp of Confederate Veterans, formed in 1891. The cost for the monument was approximately $1,000, about $31,000 in today's money. It was manufactured in Petersburg, Virginia, by Burns and Campbell of the Petersburg Granite Company. The monument arrived in Berryville in 6 pieces. According to newspaper accounts, the granite was quarried from a battlefield near Petersburg, Virginia. The monument has a base of 3 stacked rectangular rusticated pieces that support a tapered square shaft inscribed on its 4 sides. This is capped by a wide cornice on which the statue rests that bears the inscription 1861 to 1865. On top of that is the statue of a Confederate soldier. The dedication of the monument is inscribed on the front of the base. On the other 3 sides of the pedestal are inscribed names of approximately 100 Confederate soldiers from Clarke who lost their lives in battle. They are organized according to their company. The statue in Berryville is shown on the image on the right. It is of no one specific person, and it is not Benjamin Berry, the founder of Berryville, that many people mistake him for. The male figure is an unarmed Confederate soldier in uniform, standing in a contrapposto pose, where his left foot is forward and his weight shifted. His head is downcast, his arms are crossed, and he clutches his hat in his right hand. His belt buckle bears the inscription CS. A water canteen rests on top of his haversack. Both straps are draped across his body. He bears a mustache and wavy hair and stands approximately 8 feet tall. According to a newspaper article of the period, the figure is of Appomattox, which represents, quote, a Confederate soldier when there dawns upon him a realization that all for which he had fought for 4 long years, is irretrievably lost, end quote. This was a popular image during the late 19th and early 20th century and was based on a painting of the same name completed in 1888 by John Adams Elder, an artist from Fredericksburg, Virginia, that's shown in the image on the top left. It shows a lone Confederate soldier viewing the aftermath of the Battle of Appomattox Courthouse, where Lee ultimately surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant. That in turn was the basis for the bronze statue commissioned by the Robert E. Lee Camp No. 2 United Confederate Veterans of Alexandria that same year and completed in May 24, 1889 by the sculptor M. Caspar Berberl of New York City that's shown on the bottom left. Berberl is best well known for his sculptures at Gettysburg. That statue in Alexandria from 1899 and owned by the United Daughters of Confederacy was taken down in June 2020. I looked at other Confederate monuments in the Commonwealth, and the Clarke County Monument appears to be the only one in Virginia on a courthouse green that depicts an unarmed soldier. All others that depict a soldier show him with a rifle. The bronze one in Alexandria that was removed in June was not located on a courthouse green. The Appomattox statue exists in other states, but I only found one other in Virginia. It is in Mount Jackson in the Our Soldiers Cemetery. It was erected in 1903. But he is armed, like the vast majority of other Confederate monuments depicting soldiers. Other common types of Confederate monuments include tablets and obelisks. Most of these statues were mass-produced and could be ordered by catalog. The one in Clarke, as I mentioned, was manufactured by the firm of Burns and Campbell in Petersburg, Virginia. They are well known for their stone monuments, especially in cemeteries in southern Virginia. Shown here are examples of how you could order these from catalogs. They were ubiquitous during the era. To the left is an ad by the American Bronze Foundry Company in Chicago for the at-ready Confederate statue, which is cast bronze. It is identical to the one that was taken down on September 12th in Charlottesville and is being transported to the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation here in the valley. On the right, you see another ad by the Monumental Bronze Company in Connecticut for a Union soldier. In fact, you could order these as either. They just had different versions of the uniform and belt buckles. These types of companies produced monuments in granite, marble, and also zinc. Who were the Association of the Survivors of the Clarke Cavalry? They were surviving members of the Clarke Cavalry, which means they fought on horseback, of Company D, 6th Regiment. They formed on August 30th, 1884 with 64 members. This is about 23 years after the beginning of the Civil War, so these men were probably in their early to mid-40s at the youngest. In the late 1870s, after the end of Reconstruction, these types of veterans groups began to spring up. During Reconstruction, it was illegal for former Confederate soldiers to congregate. The Clarke County Historical Association has the association's minute book, which runs from 1884 to 1918 and provided valuable first-hand information on the subject. Along with listing the names of the members, many of whom were prominent citizens of the county, and when they died, the minute book records their plans. At their first meeting in 1884, they named themselves, and they agreed they'd meet annually with a $1 initiation fee and dues to be determined. They also adopted a resolution to form a 10-member committee to look into the, quote, question of the erection of a suitable monument at some convenient point in this county and to raise money and receive contributions for it, end quote. The Association of the Survivors of the Clarke Cavalry continued to meet until 1918. This was 57 years after the Civil War, so the survivors would have been in their mid-70s. The average life expectancy for men at that time was 53. The photograph on the right is from the Clarke County Historical Association's collection and is thought to be of them taken at a reunion in the late 1880s or early 1890s. This timeline summarizes how things transpired from when the idea was developed by the association to when the monument was realized. I have completed a very detailed timeline that provides much more information as well as lists the sources, but here I'm just listing the highlights. August 30, 1884 was the first meeting of the Association of the Survivors of the Clarke Cavalry, where they decided that they wanted to erect a monument to the Confederate dead. The minutes show that they considered several locations, including Old Chapel, Green Hill Cemetery, and the cemetery at Grace Episcopal Church. By their meeting on February 13, 1886, they decided they wanted it in Berryville on the courthouse yard. They communicated with Senator Marshall McCormick, who'd been the Clarke County Commonwealth's attorney, to request that he introduce enabling legislation so they would receive title to the site of the monument. 2 weeks later, the two acts were passed by the General Assembly. March 1, 1886. They are incorporated by the General Assembly and allowed to hold real estate and be tax exempt. The same day, the General Assembly authorizes the Clarke County Board of Supervisors to convey part of the public square, 25 feet in diameter, to the association for the erection of a monument. I was unable to find much about how the requests between the association and the Board of Supervisors transpired, but obviously there were conversations between the two bodies and maybe some crossover in membership. Between the years of 1886 and 87, the association's meeting minutes reflects their attempts to raise money through donations and subscriptions. In 1886, they had about $850 in subscriptions. By 1887, $1,000 had been raised, but they didn't think that was enough to commence the work. Between 1888 and 1896, no work on the monument progressed. They continued to meet annually, and in 1890 they decided that, quote, owing to the stringency of the times, end quote, they wouldn't be able to raise the necessary funds. There was a financial downturn in the country during this time that included a crash in wheat prices, so there was an effect locally. In 1891, Captain William Nelson of Millwood, who had led Nelson's Rifles, approached the association and asked them to provide funding to the Ladies' Memorial Association of Millwood, as they wanted to erect a monument to the Confederate dead at Old Chapel. The association said no, because they wanted the monument to be in Berryville, either at the courthouse or an adjacent cemetery. On June 18, 1892, the monument at Old Chapel was dedicated. The association members attended the ceremony, but provided no funding. The monument at Old Chapel is also of granite, like the one in Berryville, but it is a simple shaft with inscriptions on the sides and topped by a pile of cannonballs. It was produced by Deal & Brothers in Charlestown, West Virginia. It was not until the association's August 1897 meeting that the monument is mentioned again. This time they decided to discharge the old committee and create a new one. They had about $283 in cash. Presumably, many of the subscriptions were unable to be paid. A year later, in 1898, the association had raised an additional $220 and decided they needed a woman's auxiliary committee to help them raise funds. By April 1899, they had $625, and they needed $375 more, so they appealed to the Stonewall chapter of the United Daughters of the Confederacy and the Jeb Stuart Camp of Confederate Veterans for help in raising the additional funds. They were able to raise the money quickly and conferred with the two other organizations regarding the proposed design. In looking at the Jeb Stuart Camp of Confederate Veterans meeting notes, also held at the Clarke County Historical Association archives, they resolved to cooperate with the Association of the Survivors of the Clarke Cavalry and the UDC to help raise funds for the monument. During this time, the Clarke Courier advertises different lectures, musical events, and other entertainment that were being sponsored by the UDC to help raise funds for the monument. One of them was for a speech about Jefferson Davis, where admission was 10 cents. Nothing is mentioned in the association minutes about getting the deed for the land from the county, but the September 20th, 1899 minutes of the Board of Supervisors reflect a motion was adopted to donate a circular lot to the association not more than 25 feet in diameter for the erection of a monument to the Confederate dead. The resolution stated they were acting in accordance with the General Assembly Acts passed in 1886. In January 1900, the Clarke Courier announced the monument manufacturer that the design of Appomattox had been chosen, and that the unveiling would occur in July of that year. Many newspaper articles followed concerning planning about the dedication ceremonies. Finally, on June 19, 1900, less than a month before the dedication, the Clarke County Board of Supervisors gifted the association that circular plot of land 25 feet in diameter that had been talked about since 1886, 14 years earlier. In the weeks leading up to the dedication, the newspaper described what the day would hold and encouraged people to attend. The N&W Railroad offered special excursion rates from points south so that people could come from afar by train. The monument arrived in Berryville on July 18th in 6 sections, with the largest piece weighing 6 tons. The unveiling occurred on July 21st, 1900. The date was the 39th anniversary of the First Battle of Manassas, or Bull Run, the first major battle of the Civil War. According to newspaper accounts, 3,000 people attended, and the program began at 10 a.m. with flag presentations to the survivors of the Clarke Cavalry. It was a spectacle, with many events throughout the day, including a parade up Main Street, the local UDC women arriving in 6 carriages, other camps of Confederate veterans marching, and 200 men on horseback from throughout the county. The dedication was at 11:45 at the monument, and the oration was given by James W. Marshall, a judge from Augusta County, who spoke for over an hour. There were choirs, bands, red and white bunting, and intense heat. After the ceremony, there was a banquet for over 1,000 people held at the Winston Hall on East Main Street. The next thing of interest I found was in the minutes of the 32nd annual reunion of the Association of the Survivors of the Clarke Cavalry in August 1916. They wanted to approach the Stonewall chapter of the UDC to take charge of the Confederate Soldiers Monument, which stands in the courthouse grounds in Berryville, Virginia, when, quote, this organization ceases to exist, end quote. I consulted the UDC records that were available locally and at the UDC headquarters in Richmond, and I also checked the deed indexes to see if the association ever officially conveyed the monument to the UDC or any other entity, including back to the Board of Supervisors. I found nothing to indicate that they had. The association's last meeting was in 1918, according to the minute book. The Stonewall chapter of the United Daughters of the Confederacy ceased to exist in 1932. I also looked in the Board of Supervisors minutes up through 1959 to see if there was a mention of the monument reverting back to them. Nothing was found, which lines up with the fact that the only deed found giving land for the monument was to the association in 1900. Here's a list of the resources I consulted. I used mainly primary resources from the period available in public repositories or local historical associations. I was unable to find private papers that are not held in public libraries or archives, but the official records I found show that the county does not own the monument or the property on which it stands. Here are images of some of the sources I consulted. This is the minute book of the Association of the Survivors of the Clarke Cavalry. The center image shows the acts from their organization, and the one on the right is from 1916, where they wanted a committee to contact the UDC to see if they'd take over the monument. This shows the 1900 deed from the Board of Supervisors to the association on the left, and on the right is the 1900 newspaper account that was printed a few days after the dedication. The article took up 3 columns. Not much other local news was reported that week. Thank you for your attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.